Dan.
Gentlemen, thank you. I'm Dan DeCosta, Code Enforcement, Torrance County. We have a couple packets to go over here. The first one you guys have already gotten. The second one was after our inspection that we did Monday. So I'm just going to go over the synopsis right now that I wrote here, and it was a few pages in, just so you guys will have an understanding of the timeline of everything. As Steve said, 11/1/2012, Mr. Michell's conditional use permit for 203 Topless Country expired. We had not heard from him prior to that. On 12/20, the county issued a notice of violation through Mr. Mendez to Mr. Michell's attorney. On 1/16/13, Mr. Michell came in to obtain applications for his cup. He brought them back on 2/21, February 21 of 13. They were incomplete. He had a couple of things missing. I gave him a detailed explanation of what he needed, and he came in 5 days later with a completed conditional use permit. And everything was checked out on that. As of 3/12, Mr. Michell owed $8,749 in taxes on the commercial property itself. He has another piece of property next door, but that's not included in the conditional use, so we didn't include any of the information on that. He did come in today and paid some more towards it, and I have a total of back taxes of $7,700.49. I'm sorry, $7,749.51. May 10th, it'll be $9,849.61. But as of back taxes today, it's $77,49.51. 6/11, June 30th of 11, a notice was sent to the business that their dispenser license fee was due. They did not pay it. On 7/26, another notice was sent to the business that their dispenser license fee was due. They did not pay that. They did come in and pay it on 2/19/13 for the last 2.5 years. And basically that is, by statute, the county can regulate the dispenser license through the county. He has a state liquor license. This is the one that goes through the county. That was due for about 2.5 years where it wasn't paid. And then on 3/18, we had an appointment with him to go do a visual inspection. Myself, State Fire Marshal, Torrance County Fire Marshal, and State CID Electrical Inspector. The next part of this is information that I have gotten from the New Mexico Department of Environmental Health violations. I have been in contact with Bill Chavez from the Environmental Health. We have all the documentation in here. In June 23rd of 08, not long after Mr. Michell got his conditional use, he was notified of a major violation and advised of corrective remedies by obtaining a health permit to serve food in the new name of his owner and business, which is now the El Vaquero Restaurant. Mr. Michell did tell me last week he had one, but as of 3/12, there is a email in here from Mr. Chavez that he did not have one, and I spoke to him yesterday afternoon, and he still does not have a health permit for serving food at the restaurant next door that serves food to the Topless, 203 Topless. On 1/21/2010, Mr. Michell was given another notice of violation, and he was given them for subsequent months after that, on several different occasions. The last one being sent 9/22/11, notifying him of problems with his water. He was not having his water tested, and he did give us documentation that the water is being tested now, but New Mexico Health Department has not verified anything. He has not spoken to them as of yesterday afternoon. And so, as far as they're concerned, that's still in violation, and he still does not have a health permit for the restaurant. On 2/1, February 1st, that's when Mr. Michell had hired an administrator for monitoring the water. But as I said, that's not anything that we approve or disapprove. That has to go through the health department. And so the documentation is in here that he hired somebody. The next part of this would be New Mexico Alcohol and Gaming, who I've been in contact with for quite some time on this. And he has numerous violations in here for serving intoxicated persons, indecent dancing, smoking in the establishment. And we can go through all these once we start going through here. My question would be, do you generally need to go over his permit before we get into these other things? I mean, as far as his application, everything was okay on that. We went through and double checked everything, and we didn't have any issues with the application itself. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to go through the violations that he has here. Okay. There's a little bit of redundancy. I put the copies of the ordinance throughout here, and it was just to make it easier so that as we go through different parts, particularly in the second book that I've got, we'll be able to refer to that without having to jump back. The copy of what we need is right there.
Dan,
So,
which heading, which heading is that over there?
13.1.
We have them listed 3, 4, 5, and 6 here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the first book that you guys received.
Number 2?
No,
That's
I'm in the,
first. Okay.
I'm in the first book that you received.
Okay.
That's the book you received in your packages.
So if we didn't have that one tabbed,
You're just continuing behind where it says, you have this page of violations, and then we're just going to continue behind that.
yeah, let's go to this page right here, and then we'll be able to follow. And this is the notice of violation. We didn't get this one tabbed, I'm sorry, we probably thought about it. Okay. 13.1 is just the, where this is in the ordinance. Yeah. And there should be one more. Okay, this is where we're going right now. Is it going there? Go about that presentation. This is where we're at, right here.
Okay.
So you want to keep going? You're about half a dozen pages in. Thanks for being here. Let me move you to follow. You okay? Okay, what we're looking at here is a notice of violation. that our office sent out via Mr. Mendez to Mr. Michell's attorney on 12/20/12. And this is pretty standard notice of violation. It explains what the violations are, 90-3-13-1, B and C. B means that a permissive use of adult entertainment is not allowed, and that he does not have a conditional use because it had run out. It gives the type of violations. Adult land use is not allowed as a permissive use. Conditional use for the subject property on 11/1/12. Adult land use is being operated without a conditional use permit, and it gives the corrective action. And because we had an incompleted application, we had to move this back a few weeks, part of the special meeting also. But, so anyways, that's what got us here today. The next page is dated January 29th. This is where I sent a letter to Mr. Michell with all his old information so that it would help him so that he could fill out a new application. And as I said, this was sent on January 29th, 2013. The next one is on February 21st, which was the deadline for getting the conditional use in. Mr. Michell brought it in, and he was lacking a couple of details, which he has taken care of. So we sent him a registered letter saying that what he needed, and he did come in with it 5 days later. And then the next page after that is March 5th, where we're explaining to him where this meeting was going to be here. And when I had sent the original packet out to Mr. Michell, he did not get it. He had a different address on the tax records, so we sent it out there and he didn't get it. He did come in a few days later and pick it up, and that's just a copy of where he signed for picking it up. And then, of course, the page after that is the information that we sent, showing that we had sent it to him. The next page is the picture of the map. And it kind of gives you an overview of what the property looks like, if you're not familiar with it, where it is. It's the old restaurant at exit 203 over near the landfill, and the motel is over there also. So if you look in the centerpiece here, it says 246-49. You see that? That's the property ID. That right there is basically where the Topless Country is, and then it's got the same ID number right next to it. And so they're basically both, I don't understand if they were divided or whatever, but they both have the same tax property. And this is the property that we are now looking at right here, that we're talking about today. The next couple of pages, as you'll see, it's our tax records from RealWare, and I have some numbers on here, and they have been corrected, and that's a copy of what I just gave you. And so what the Treasurer's Office told us this morning is that as of this morning, he owes $7,700 and $749.51 in back taxes for this particular piece of property. And May 10th, it'll be up another $2,100 approximately. And so these here have all been updated, these next 3 or 4 pages here.
So the 7,000 part is delinquent.
$7,749.51 is delinquent. He paid, I believe, $1,000 this morning, and I think he had paid maybe a couple thousand about a month ago, I believe it was. So this is now the updated one that I gave you. The ones that are in the packet aren't valid anymore. The next page after the taxes letter that I received on March 12th last week from Mr. William Chavez, and it states the New Mexico Environment Department, Environmental Health Bureau Food Service and Food Processing Regulation 7.6.2 NMAC Section 8.B1 states no person shall operate a food establishment without a current permit. The definition of a food establishment also may include bars. The Environmental Health Bureau has notified the establishment, El Vaquero and Topless 203, in the past of the permitting requirement of the operation. If the bar and restaurant are currently in operation, they would be in violation of Section 7.6.2.8B1. In order to fully comply with this requirement, they must meet the plan review requirements in Section 7.6.2.8.A, which would include compliance with non-community water system requirements in New Mexico drinking water regulations and approved wastewater disposal. And this also would include his health permit for the restaurant. This was as of the 12th. I spoke to Mr. Chavez yesterday afternoon. He still has no permit, no health permit, and none of these things have been resolved as far as the New Mexico Health Department is concerned, regardless of whether he hired an administrator for the water. Yes, sir.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Water, does he have a well on that area, or does he get it from the city, or?
I understand that there's a well there that is not pumping enough, or it's either completely dry. From what I have been told by the Environment Department and others, is that Mr. Michell hauls water in to the property. Now, I saw a couple of half-buried water storage tanks over there.
And Mr. Torrance, just for to get your location, this is located about 6 miles east of Moriarty, and it's the 203 exit from I-40, commonly known as the Longhorn Ranch exit. And so it's out in a rural area.
Yeah, no, no. Okay, thank you.
The next page on this packet is a notice of a major violation, corrective action response required. It's dated 6/23/08, and it was written to 203 Topless Country and El Vaquero Cafe. And it states that an inspection of 203 Topless Country El Vaquero Cafe was conducted on 6/23/08, and serious violations of New Mexico food service and food processing regulations were noted. Deficiencies that could not be corrected at the time of the inspection include: no person shall operate a food establishment without a current permit. Permits are not transferable from person to person or location to location. The violations listed above present the potential for foodborne illness and/or harm to the public, consumers, and employees. You are hereby required to provide written evidence to the New Mexico Environment Department detailing how and when the violations were corrected. Your response to the person and address listed below is required. They didn't put the number of days that it was on there. This was in 2008, not long after he got his permit, and has not been corrected as of this point. I don't know what the condition. There are some reports in the back here that looks like things weren't too bad, but this has been 5 years, almost 5 years later.
We still don't have a permit.
No health permit.
And it's been in operation for this 5 years without a permit.
Yes.
And nobody has, what I'm trying to understand is why is it still open?
I was told by Mr. Chavez that he was embarrassed that it was still open, that they've been so backlogged that they hadn't been able to, that they hadn't been out there. We do not regulate health department regulations. This is our opportunity at these meetings to ensure that everything else has been dealt with. And so that's part of why we're here also.
Dan, so on this type of thing, the one you're talking about is a state department,
Yes, New Mexico,
enforce it. Have you-
well, basically, they would enforce it the same way that we do. They send out a notice of violation. I'm not certain of every little step that they have, but what I've been explained, they send out a notice of violation, and if the notice of violation has not been dealt with, then they deal with it through a magistrate court. Correct?
I can address, they have an administrative process where they would enter an administrative compliance order and basically issuing orders to comply, and then if there's a failure to comply, then usually they have fines that add up, and if there's still continuing violation, then they can move to take further action, perhaps through the courts, but Mr. DeCosta is correct, it's a very similar process, but it's an administrative process, not through the court.
Oh, but they, from what I could understood, they can go to the courts after that
Correct.
administrative process has run its course.
Correct, and usually their administrative process has some serious teeth.
So why this, how they let this slip through the cracks for so long? Like I said, Mr. Chavez said that he was embarrassed by it. The next page is basically, I believe what this is the field notes, and, you know, it's all their notes about when they were over there, what they found. You know, there were definitely a few issues even back then. Says that they're on the second page, sanitizer use verification, test strips available. On the next page, it says no thermometer found in reach of cooler. Floors in prep area deteriorated, concrete not smooth or easily cleanable. Adequate lighting not provided in walk-in freezer or dry storage. And then the next page is basically everything that they went through. Which, even if most of this was right, it's still 5 years later. So this was just put in there for your benefit to see what was done. Unless you guys want to go through every piece on here, I don't see really a need to at this point. Sir?
I need to ask you a question. You went over there to investigate our fire department in Mexico. Did you see this stuff still there?
Well, I'm not qualified to do health inspections. I do have pictures of everything. I would say that the floor is probably in the same shape. Mr. Michell told me himself that they're not using the walk-in freezers. I didn't see the place as visually filthy or anything like that, but by the same token, I'm not qualified to tell you exactly what is needed there. That's not my end, that's the health department.
Okay. Do you know if the health department's been back there since?
They have not, they're gonna be though. Mr. Chavez told me that he's going to be, you know, there, like I said, he said he's embarrassed, particularly since we're having to present all this stuff right now. And he did send us all this.
Thank you.
So anyways, on the next page, you'll see a food establishment permit for the Flying G 203 Topless Country. That was the previous owners. So that was the last one that was there, and it was issued 7/31/2008.
Dan, Mr. Larson has a question.
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, I think I don't understand, but now I'm going to say I don't understand. Why would we look at all of these individual or pieces and parts of a health thing when wouldn't it be that our board would simply see a piece of paper that says they have a permit, a health permit, or they don't have a health permit. Why would we even concern ourselves with all these details?
Well, I can explain that when we get to another portion here. I wanted to document everything so that you understood what the seriousness of it was going on. You can't make decisions based on this particular part, but in the ordinance, it specifically says that the business has to comply with all fire, safety, and health regulations.
Yeah, I understand that, see, but I would think if there's been a determination that they don't comply, that's period, end of story, until they do comply.
Adolfo, should we keep going through all this stuff?
It's in the record for your information. As Mr. DeCosta stated, the ordinance does require compliance, as he stated, with the health regulations, liquor license regulations. So what staff has put together is documentation for the county's information as to what the status is from the reports from those agencies. So this is what NMED sent to staff. Staff is putting it in front of you, but to the degree you want to look into it, I think, Mr. Larson, your question is proper, whether or not it's not the county's decision whether or not they have a permit, it's just, is there or is there not one from NMED, for example.
I have a question for our attorney also. Does the environmental department, health department, one of those, they have the authority to let a place remain open or not to, depending upon their inspections?
Yeah, they do have the authority, to put it differently, they have the authority to shut down food establishments, for example. Yes, they have the authority to shut down a food establishment, and they, in those instances, may go through courts to get that affect that closure. I'm not 100% clear, but I know that they have done it in the past. They've done it in other areas of the state, so they do and they can shut down establishments.